Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 44. It is July 1st, 2019. The summer is flying by. Saturday, I played the Vans Warped Tour in Atlantic City with my original band members. I want to shout out Mike Russo, Rob Piccinini Jr., and John Longley for just killing it. It was a great day, and Kevin Lyman has always done big favors for me and stuck his neck out for me, and he put me on a really good stage at a really good time. We went on right before a giant lightning storm kind of shut everything down for a few hours, but everything got back Saturday, and I heard that yesterday was amazing. So Warped Tour, 25 years. Kevin says it's the last one, but he said that last summer, so we'll see what happens. I got to see the Aquabats, who I'm touring with this September. I got to see Save Ferris. Got to see a lot of great stuff. And I got to see Hidden in Plain View, who I toured with in 2006 with Simple Plan. And Joe, the lead singer of Hidden in Plain View, his wife, Eva, is my manager. So it's a very small world, but it was really cool hanging out with their family and just seeing so many friends. It just felt like an amazing community event. And Warped Tour is great. Like, it was just a really fun day, and it got me in a really good mood. And it was also a hard week. My wife's grandpa passed away. Rest in peace to Pups. That's what we called him. A really cool guy. He was in his 90s. Spent a lot of time with him in the past few years at family events, getting to know him. He's born in Canada, born up in Quebec, came down to the U.S. He was a logger, a hunter, really interesting guy who spanned between different generations. And I got to go to the wake, and it was just got me thinking about like the legacy we leave is the people we inspire, the people we love. And this guy was so loved, such a funny, interesting guy, I don't know. He'll be missed. I'm really going to miss him, and he'll always live on in my memories of him. So life is important. Every day is important, and every second is important. I've been thinking a lot about that. So I wanted to kick this episode off talking about just one of the themes I talk about a lot on the podcast is the role of inspiration and the unquenchable human spirit and the unstoppable moxie it takes to want to create anything or follow an inspirational path and hope it leads somewhere. And like, there's two sides of every creative endeavor, right? You have like the inspiration and the fun of doing something, being in the moment, creating music, working with bands, producing music, painting, writing a screenplay. And then there's the arduous hard work, which is the marketing, the going on tour, the driving 12 hours, the putting up your t-shirt stand at the merch booth, the slugging your merch across like a hot parking lot at Warped Tour, So it takes a lot of moxie to survive in the independent world when you don't have people who are being paid to do the hard work for you. So I wanted to do a label profile today. This is new. I've never done anything like this, like a profile of an indie label, talking to the dude who started it, his philosophy, what he's learned, what he's changing, what he enjoys about running a label. So the dude who I'm talking to today is Rob Lanterman from Boise, Idaho. And I don't know if any of you noticed this, but people from Boise always call Boise. They say it with a S, and people not from Boise say it with a Z, Boise. So I guess if you're saying Boise, it's Boise, right? Because it's like, if you're from España, that's where you're from. You're not from Spain. You can't go, oh, people from España are saying it wrong, right? I don't know. It's like people from the East Coast always call Oregon, and they call Nevada. I don't know if you've witnessed this, but people just say it wrong. So I've been saying Boise wrong my whole life probably. So Boise. Rob is very belaboring this point. Rob says Boise, and I should have asked him about this, like why I say it wrong, or if only people from Boise say Boise. But he's actually, I'm cracking myself up. There's no one here. I'm recording this alone. I'm cracking myself up. The label's actually based in Caldwell, Idaho, which is like a suburb of Boise, which is the home of Big O, now Otis Julius. But to make things even more complicated, Big O just moved to Los Angeles. Big O is a band I toured with a few years ago, who I met at a festival up in Washington, and Big O's bass player, Rob Lanterman, started Hidden Home Records. So over the years, I got to know about his label, like know about the bands he puts out, his philosophy. And what I love, it's a punk label. What I love about Rob is that he has this approach of like, yeah, this music needs to be archived. I want to help my friends. So I'm going to invest in pressing their CDs or their vinyl, get them press and publicity, help them with marketing. And it's like this really sweet, timeless, intrepid desire to bring attention to art that he believes in. No corporation, no corporate sponsorship, no one paying for Spotify playlist placement. It's just him and his friend believing in these bands. And I've always felt like post 2006, I talk about this and Download This Song, and a lot of my songs about the music industry kind of address this. I've always felt like the DIY approach is dope, but there's a lot of this like, oh, it's all for me. Like this, I'm just in it for myself. I'm going to make my videos, put them on YouTube, put my stuff on TuneCore, monetize my streams, and that's it. I don't want to help other people. And maybe there are people out there who do want to do that, but I feel like that's the attitude with hip hop, especially. And even though the nerdcore scene, we tour collectively, we all kind of do our own thing with our platforms digitally, if that makes sense. Like we'll collaborate, but I'd never want MC Frontalot to create a quote unquote label and put out my music, or I don't think he'd ever trust me to do that, because you basically can do it yourself, right? If you're a one person industry creating content. But Rob has created this platform for people who need a boost. Let's say it's a band of people who do it as a side project until it takes off enough they can quit their day jobs. Rob helps invest the money in the CDs, the marketing, the publicity. It's just dope. So I feel like it's a old school approach that is much needed, and it's amazing to like learn of that. The Discord approach, which is a lot of, Ian MacKay's old label or current label, like the Hopeless Records approach, the idea that we can create a home for these people, which is based around touring and community. I freaking love it. So even though they're from Boise, even though they're from Idaho, let's just say, Rob talks about on the podcast how a lot of the bands on his label are actually from Salt Lake City. And this is something I've noticed, that Denver considers itself like not West Coast, but like the West, right? Like the gateway to the West. Technically that's St. Louis, but the Northwest, Boise and Salt Lake City consider themselves Northwest. Big O put out a mixtape called the Northwest Mixtape. And it technically is the Northwest, but I guess when I used to think of Northwest, I'd think about Seattle, Portland, but the Northwest is those other states that are inland a bit. So Hidden Home Records, has a lot of bands from that area. And to bring things full circle, Rob recently repressed Audio Karate's first album, Space Camp. And Audio Karate toured with me in 2004 with Say Anything. And the first time I toured the UK with another band was with Audio Karate, a band called My Awesome Compilation, and a band called Piebald that I sampled for iGeneration. So this is my discussion with Rob Lanterman. We end the discussion talking about C.S. Lewis and some of our religious beliefs, which is kind of a cool cap to this. It just shows his depth as a person. And he talks about his band Shrug Dealer that he plays in. And I ask him, why don't you sign Shrug Dealer? You're creating this platform for other people. He's like, oh, it's Punk Rock Guild. I don't want to hook myself up. I'm like, what? Come on, Rob. He's a musician too. So that's why he appreciates both sides of the coin. We end with a song with Big O that Rob plays on. Big O is now Otis Julius. Big O is now Otis Julius, but Rob plays bass on this song. It's called Lose Control. So thought I'd drop that flavor. And I think that the main topic that is really interesting is we talk about the importance of building a local scene versus like when a band should branch out and play different cities. So that's what's up. This episode is brought to you by some of our new Patreon supporters, Jacqueline, Aaron, and Hercules. Thank you very much. And shout out to some of our old supporters who underwrote this episode, Andrew, Maverick, and Joe. Show news, Saturday, July 6th, I'm playing Anime Midwest with Whitey Cracker, Mega Ran, and a bunch of other artists near Chicago in Rosemont, Illinois. So that is this Saturday. Come check it out if you're in the Midwest. Happy 4th of July. For our international listeners, 4th of July is the time of the year when Americans wrestle with our confusing identity by getting drunk and blowing things up and enjoying the sunshine. So happy 4th. I'll be in Philadelphia the 4th of July working with Rodney from the Dead Milkmen on this new project I'm doing, which is a Poe project that's coming out in the spring. But I don't want to spoil that. And I don't want to talk too much about the future. I want to talk about now. I want to talk about Hidden Home Records and Rob Lanterman and what's going on with the awesome Northwest punk rock scene. So let's dive into that. Thanks for listening, and I'll check in with y'all at the end. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Rob Lanterman from Boise, Idaho. What's up, Rob?
Hey, man.
So how did we meet?
We met because I played bass for my buddy Miles, who also goes by Otis Julius, who used to go by Big O. And we did a month-long tour across the United States.
And the podcast listeners will remember Miles from one of my early episodes.
For sure. And I've probably met a lot of them because you have some pretty hardcore fans that were coming out to those shows. So
a lot of listeners have seen you play, probably.
Yeah, probably. I met a kid here who saw us in Arizona, actually, at Lars Fest. He had just moved here. He was like, I have a picture of you on my phone. And then touring with Miles. Miles is like a very money-oriented person. Like he's very
I think he's very fiscally responsible.
Fiscally responsible, yeah. And he just is. So I was like, oh man, I kind of took some things from him. Here's the way that I looked, because I've always been kind of like a branding nerd, and not like a technical branding nerd, but like as a kid, I was really into like Marvel versus DC, or I was into whatever, Disney versus Nickelodeon. And then when I started getting into music, it was like I could organize my CDs by how many were from Drive Thru, or how many were from Tooth and Nail, or Side One Dummy, things like that, And so I've always enjoyed logos, and I was a big hockey fan growing up, so that probably contributed to that too. And so for me, it was like I realized I had all the, especially, so I'm from Boise, Idaho. That's where Hidden Home Records is based out of, right? And in Boise, Idaho, I realized I had a lot of friends, and actually just from touring in general, I had a lot of friends that were, I guess, they were really good, but they had no idea how to market their music. But I was like, why haven't people heard these bands? So I was like, well, I bet I could help them hear those bands. And so I'd say that's kind of why I started the label, and I've always kind of wanted to, because I've enjoyed the aspect of organizing my CDs by label or whatever.
Right.
But I kind of just did it because I thought it would be fun. And even though it was like money on my part, I finally had a job where I could like pay for that. And I was like, well, if I sell out of my copies, that's cool or whatever. Mm-hmm. And maybe it'll happen down the road or whatever. And then probably on like my fourth release, all of a sudden, like all my PR emails started getting back to me, because I was doing all this PR when these bands didn't know how to do themselves, or didn't want to take the time to do. And I had gone through and made my contact spreadsheet and done all that stuff. And so they started getting back to me, and I was like, oh, I need to start setting myself up for success at this point, but still being able to help the bands in ways that they didn't know how to do themselves.
Yeah.
And just making it a partnership rather than like a label taking advantage of a band for their music. Just being like, I like this music, I want other people to hear it. The thing about like the money though is like, you hear about all these labels like in the 90s that were very much like, oh, we don't have any receipts or royalties from that label. We don't know what happened to them. And so I thought that was kind of like all on the table when I was working with these bands at first. But then once I started making money, and not even really making money, just making money back, I was like, oh, well, damn, now I have to like do something about that. So,
right.
So that's kind of been, right now my process is basically coming out of a period of financial idiocy. I don't know, and so I'm basically what I'm trying to do right now is become a legal business.
So an LLC.
Yeah. My roommate just got an LLC for like studio work and for tech, for like IT stuff. So
because then you can deduct your losses, and that like is great. Then
you
don't have to pay taxes on your stuff you haven't made money on.
Exactly. And I wonder how many of like my record label peers, even the ones who are like way better at money than I am, like I don't think most of them even know that. Like the ones that I talk to,
right.
Like the ones that I talk to, even the ones who have had really successful releases are still like, well, we're not really making money off of our other releases, so why would we become like a legal label and get the government on our ass? But I don't know.
But the government's going to see anything through PayPal or whatever, right? So it's important. Right. That's kind of why we're bringing the information to the people.
Right. And so what I just finished was for all of my PayPal receipts from the get-go of the label. I have them all recorded.
Yeah.
I'm going through my personal PayPal for anything I paid for like a pressing or what, because this was all out of pocket, and a lot of DIY labels do it out of pocket.
Right. So it's their personal, it's like they're spending money for fun. Right. They're not trying to make money.
No, it really is, which sounds crazy to everyone, but it's, I don't know, we all like doing it. Like people, like my parents don't understand it. Like some of my friends don't understand it. I think the ones who are kind of into punk rock do.
Well, what's been your biggest like commercial success?
We helped out with the Audio Karate repressing, which is a band
Yeah, my first U.S. tour was with them and Say Anything.
Right, and that turned out that went really well
because you made vinyl for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, so really, this label Wiretap Records kind of headed the project up. I actually emailed them about doing tapes at one point to re-release their records, and then they said, "Hey, there's this other label." And I had friends on that label, and they were like, "Yeah, this label Wiretap Records wants to is putting it out on vinyl." And so other Rob from Wiretap, invited me to be a part of that, and so we did
as an investor,
yes,
and a brand ambassador,
yes. And so we ended up selling out of all of the first copies. We still have some of the second pressing, but
did they share the streaming with you, or just the
no? I think that's all through
Kung Fu.
Kung Fu put it out originally.
Yeah.
So what they did, they recorded this album right before they broke up and became like Indian School, and so they recorded a whole album by themselves and just broke up or like started a new band.
Oh,
and so and like Jason, I think, right? The guitarist?
Jason Camacho.
Yeah, so he apparently he didn't play guitar for like the entire time they were like not a band, but he had all of these masters, and so they're finally putting that record out.
As Indian School or as Audio Karate?
As Audio Karate.
That's smart.
No, so they recorded this album as Audio Karate and then just stopped and started Indian School.
Oh, wow.
From what I understand.
So it seems to
I don't know them super well, but...
How did you discover them? Because it seems like they're a very niche-y underground...
I was a Vandals fan. And so the bass player of the Vandals, Joe Escalante, who's actually the one I originally hit up about re-releasing Space Camp and Lady Melody on tape, and he kind of directed me to the band, who directed me to Wiretap. But I was a big Vandals fan, and he ran Kung Fu Records. And so Kung Fu had the Vandals, they had the Ataris, they had Audio Karate, Useless ID, Apocalypse, Hoboken, a bunch of bands like that. And so what I used to do, because I had comps growing up, but I was a little bit after like the whole like punkorama thing. Mm-hmm. So what I would do is I would go to these label websites like Fat or Kung Fu or whatever, and I would like download all the free MP3s that they had on their website, and that's kind of how I got into a bunch of bands. And
that's great.
Then Spotify Discover reintroduced Audio Karate to me in like 2014, like the end of the year, like we project this is what you'll listen to, and it had a song from Space Camp and a song from Lady Melody on it, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. What's this? I was like, oh, it's Audio Karate. And then this other song played, and I was like, this is really cool. What is this? And it was the other Audio Karate record because they sound completely different. And so, anyway, that's how I got into it.
What's your favorite song by them?
Probably Jesus is Alive and Well and Living in Mexico.
I like that.
But the other one is Halfway Decent. And Halfway Decent is like the pop punky song from Space Camp.
Oh, yeah.
And then Jesus is Alive and Well is from Lady Melody.
That was kind of their departure record.
Yeah, but it's so rad. It sucks that it just didn't get like the press it needed when they put it out. I don't know if it's the press, just like it didn't stick with people like it should have, I guess.
It was like, that was 2004. We did the Absolute Punk tour. It's interesting to see that like a band like that was like so progressive and great, that I felt like was as good as a band like Brand New that was like blowing up and going gold. And it all came down to like label deals and who was putting money where, and it's just like the punk underground world is so, it's really not DIY in that like there's all this secret money that pushes things to the front. And I think we trace that back to Nirvana being a band that was indie and underground, that had like, people didn't really know their story, but when something sounds a certain way, you assume it's like a DIY thing. I guess people knew with Nirvana, but that kind of like led to this whole influx of the intersection between indie and mainstream, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. I was listening to I think you said something in one of your other podcasts about like how indie music got like corporatized basically, or in the 90s especially, right?
Yeah, right.
And so that whole era, like that early 2000s era, is coming right out of that.
You're a big Descendants fan, right?
Yeah.
And were they ever on a major label or?
All was. Descendants weren't. All was. So yeah, are you a
I saw the documentary, the Filmage. Yeah. So that's all I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's really good. Actually, Audio Karate got me into a Descendants show in Spokane, and again, I don't really know them that well, and I don't.
Descendants or Audio Karate?
Audio Karate. Yeah. Like as people, I don't know them well. I know their music, but like, but they got us into this Descendants show, and which is awesome. And it was like a Wilhelm Scream, which is one of my favorite bands, and Descendants, which is another one of my favorite bands. So it was just, and then Audio Karate, and it was yeah, I guess that Lady Melody is Carl Alvarez's like favorite record they did at the Blasting Room, which is like the Descendants studio.
Oh, so Audio Karate recorded there.
And their bass player, it's like his favorite record they ever did there. So I didn't repress that. I only repressed Space Camp. Yeah,
that's pretty dope.
Anyway, but yeah, we've had other successes too. This band Casual Friday, my buddies from California, like blew up on Reddit.
Oh, cool.
Like literally he just posted a picture of the vinyl on Reddit, their singer did. And I mean, we were doing PR. We were getting like streams. We were getting...
what's the album called?
Weekend Forever.
So the cover, the guy with the shorts and the red shoes.
Yeah. And literally he just posted a picture of the vinyl on Reddit, and all of a sudden, like he just got a bunch of upvotes, and then there were 4 labels involved, and all 4 just about sold out.
So what is Open Door Records?
Open Door Records is a label from California. This hat I'm wearing is actually an Open Door Records hat.
Yeah.
I actually used to do PR for them.
Cool.
And so it's my buddy's label. He put out the band Just Friends and the band Grad Life, and they just signed to Pure Noise Records. Actually, both of those bands. But it's kind of like a power pop punk label. I don't know, like. I guess I'd call it like a Weezer punk, like that Casual Friday band. In my mind is like if you took a band, if you gave a punk band the Blue album and that's all they listened to for like an entire year, and then they wrote an album, that's what that band would sound like. But it's it's really rad though. It's really fun.
And Casual Friday is obviously on Spotify. And
yes,
cool.
They are.
Graduating Life, are they?
That's Open Door. A lot of them are going to be Open Door bands, I bet.
Okay,
because they're from that local scene.
If I type Wicked Bears, which is another one of your bands, is it going to be Hidden Home?
It might be, yeah.
Let's see. I'm just curious.
I think it'll be a lot of Salt Lake bands. And I've worked with a lot of Salt Lake bands.
Odd Robot, Problem Daughter, Dead Bars.
MCKC is a Hidden Home guy.
Okay. Good work, dude.
But that's just the dude from Wicked Bears. But like I can't. The other bands are kind of all on Wiretap, actually.
And here's the thing I wanted to talk about is like, you talked about branding in the beginning of this interview. And years ago, when I first played Warped Tour, a lot of the listeners know this. I signed Weird Science, who was the drummer from Coheed, who's now back with Coheed. And it was my hope that all MC Lars fans would love his records because I did, and vice versa. But it's very different than me. And if you type Weird Science into Spotify, like I licensed the second album. It's all like Sage Francis, Idea and Abilities. It's kind of like the underground serious rap.
Yeah.
And so I realized that you can't kind of force a brand association with music. The algorithms do that for you. Right. And that's for me. You type me on there, it's all the nerdcore guys and comedy and ska stuff. And so it's like this question of what I'm interested in, starting an indie label, starting from the ground up. Like, can you create these algorithmic similarities? And is it by taste or is it by bands that tour together? You know what I mean? Like how much power do we have over the robots?
I'm kind of finding that it's bands that tour and play shows together.
Okay.
The more I look into it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely like scenes, and there's definitely bands on Hidden Home that if you like, especially kind of the emo bands, I think that if you go to their Spotify profiles, they'll be on each other's like related artists. But in general, I'm finding it's just a scene thing. And like, I don't know if Hidden Home is really based around a scene as much as it's based around my taste. And there's definitely a little bit of a scene that's come along with it. Like the bands know each other and they'll play shows together and book shows for each other. And that's rad. But a band like Wicked Bears tours down to California almost exclusively, And so when they're down there, they'll play with like the Wiretap bands, like Odd Robot, or their friends in Salt Lake, Problem Daughter, just signed to Wiretap.
Right.
So it's just going to be like I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is that I'm based out of Boise, but I work with bands from all over.
Because you're international.
Do
you have international bands?
I have a couple.
And you have international?
I have 3. I'm going to Fest with one. They're from Denmark, and they're called Forever Unclean, and they're flying into New York, and then we're going to drive down to Fest together.
That's dope, man.
I'm going to be their merch guy. Yeah, they're really cool guys. And so
they're flying to New York.
We were part of a 7-inch with them and a few other labels. So
that's cool. And then what's your band you just started? Or you said you're playing this August?
Do you want to get into that?
Yeah.
I play in a band called Shrug Dealer.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just like fast melodic punk rock.
Is it on Hidden Home?
No, because I felt like Hidden Home, even though it's not like a big label, it does have a little bit of like of a following a little bit.
Why not leverage that?
I just kind of felt like it'd be cheap since we hadn't even played a show when we put our album out. I'll probably do one eventually because we've done like some out of town dates now, and we're actually on a label in New York called Knuckle Down Records right now, which is just kind of the scene that we've kind of become a part of by playing shows, and they kind of have their own thing going.
Yeah, but that's what like guys like Ian MacKaye and stuff did. They put themselves out.
Yeah, no, and I've done that before. Like my solo records out on Hidden Home, and a few of my bands have been on Hidden Home, but Shrug Dealer just hadn't even like played a show yet when we put our EP out, and like no one knew who we were. So I don't know, it just felt weird. I'll probably do it eventually.
You have integrity, Rob.
Too
much integrity.
It's just guilt. It's just that like punk rock guilt or whatever.
Let me ask you a question.
It's stupid.
Let's talk numbers.
How
much? No, this is like good for business. And if you don't want to talk about this, you don't have to. How much do you guys gross on digital a month?
A band, their sales don't keep up if they're not, or like they're not touring. The sales don't keep up. If I just put a release out and I get on a bunch of Spotify playlists, then it'll shoot up for sure.
Right.
And like that happened last month with Urban Outfielders. But it wavers depending on how active the bands are.
So there's not like a number you can rely on per month.
No, not for me.
Interesting.
I'm not really. I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing to say.
Yeah, so it fluctuates
a lot,
which is why a lot of people don't start labels because they don't know what it's going to generate.
Yeah, no, you definitely have to like it and be in it for like the passion of it. I think that I guess I'm kind of in a transitionary stage right now, but I think that in the next couple years I'll start seeing a little bit more activity and growth because I'm I'm learning how to do it better too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so even promotion, like I've always been good at online promotion, getting reviews, getting streams, getting interviews. For the most part, I've always been really good at that. A lot of the sites that I read before I started a label are now sites that I know the people of and that they'll cover the band, but that stuff doesn't work as much as I thought it would. Like people don't follow in my like hypothesis, people don't follow a band just because they're good, and because there's so many bands, people don't follow a band just because they're on a website they like.
Yeah, or even if a video goes viral, they might not remember the artist. They'll just be like, they're on treadmills.
Yeah. I think Reddit works pretty well, in all honesty. But other than that, like people follow bands because they tour. Even the bands with the roughest recordings on my label, if they do like a weekend, I'll get like 1 or 2 CD orders for them. And it's not even like, I don't know, if every band just took like 2 weeks out of the year and played out of town, we'd probably all get a little bit more money.
And it's the question of how the heck these people get people to come see them, right? If you're a band from Boise and you're playing San Diego, you have to be on a bill with other bands people know. Otherwise, it's kind of fruitless, right?
Right.
And that I always felt like every great tour I've done is when I'm opening for like a cult band that people love or an artist, because then people have an association with you. And all the new bands I found, you're right, have been through live shows, opening for like bands that I love. And so I guess the question is, at what point do you try to negotiate stuff with agents and stuff to get your bands like the right tours or the right shows? Or do you just say, go, see what happens?
I don't know, because I don't don't know who I would talk to. I've had a few bands hit me up and be like, "Hey, can you get us on other tours?" And I've kind of been like, I don't know a ton about that. I can point you to people who maybe do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been my thing. Like, I can press your record. I can get you press. At least digital press.
Yeah. Which is pretty much the only kind of press now.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, it's been difficult.
And when did you last look at a magazine and see press on a band and be like, "Ooh, I'm going to listen to that," like a physical magazine?
It's been a long time,
right?
And it's not that I don't want to. I just don't even think about it anymore. Yeah. But also, I don't see, like, when I was growing up, it was like alt press, and I don't see alt press in stores anymore.
Alternative press.
Mm-hmm.
I have a story. Can I tell you my story about them?
Yeah, please do.
All right. So I'm going to no disrespect to them, but years ago, I did a tweet that I talked about how they'd become like a fashion magazine because it was always about like the coolest bands who looked the most fashionable. Mm-hmm. And they decided they didn't want to review the Zombie Dinosaur LP because of that. Because I tweeted that, and I realized they were following my social media. Probably shouldn't have said that. But so we had a friend who produced part of that record who had someone in the business side who premiered a video on this site. Mm-hmm. But I realized there was like this division there between the social media people, the print magazine people, and the business team. And it's very interesting because like alternative press, like you said, it's now, it's really an online platform. Right. I don't see it in stores either. Do they still print it?
I don't know.
Jeez, let's look.
I actually almost, I'm sure they do. But I remember when they got smaller, like they used to be like full-size magazines and then they became smaller magazines.
Yeah.
And,
I think they still do print it.
Yeah. I actually interviewed to work for them.
Are you serious?
Or like, yeah. Well, I don't know if interview is the right word. They had like something for their digital content, like so you'd have to be like awake for like this amount of hours and keep your eye on all the music stuff. And if something newsworthy came up, you'd just bam, put it on alt press. So I interviewed for that job. I guess I took the test for that job. I applied, and they're like, "We want to see what else you can do." But then someone else got it.
Where are they based?
Cleveland.
Right. That's why they always have the alt press awards there every summer.
Yes. I don't know. Maybe it's just getting older, but you just don't relate to all the bands in that. But you know what? There's this really cool band, Ramona, that was from Seattle. I saw them play in a basement in Boise, and now they're in Philly, and they signed to Red Scare, and they were just part of that whole. They were just in AP, so maybe they are covering bands I like. I don't know. Not a lot of them that I've. There's a lot of swoopy hair. They're always the
alternative swoopy hair. They're always the alternative press. I remember I first heard about them because in the 90s, they were the first magazine to have Insane Clown Posse on the cover.
No way.
When Malenko came out.
Really?
Yeah. And it was like, they were like, because no one wanted to put them on the cover. So then now alternative press probably would be like, oh, Juggalo bands. Oh, it's not cool. Blah, blah, blah. It's so easy. I found this. For me, with British press, like there was a magazine called Kerrang, which is like a rock magazine. And when the Laptop EP came out, they were all over it. And when The Graduate came out, they were all over it. But then when I started doing ska and the nerdcore stuff, they told my publicist, "Oh, MC Lars is not a Kerrang artist." But 3 years ago, I was. It's just like you come in and out of fashion with the scenesters who are the gatekeepers in that world. And so I was like, yeah, you don't need them, but you don't also have to tell them they're a fashion magazine and piss those people off. So it's like I've always liked to point the finger at people who feel like they're too cool for school. But it really is just, it's like the popular kids at school with the right, I don't know, Atticus hoodies, right? It's not
right.
I don't know. I've always been a little bit against that, which why I'm a fan of like the underdogs.
Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. I've always actually been kind of a. Yeah, I'm the same way. I've had to tone it down with the label a little bit.
Because in what way? In like,
well, I just can't. So I mean, and I've straddled this line and probably crossed it, but like some labels, like Asian Man per se, Mike Park will tweet his stuff out. You know that like he'll just tweet his opinion out, and I'll do that too. And like Audio Karate, the band does that too. And other bands I know do that, and it's fine, it's great. But there's just some opinions that you have to keep to yourself when you're representing like a bunch of other bands and people. Unless it's something like, so you can't always be like, fuck this publication or whatever. Like, especially unless it's something that's like super wrong and unethical and like everyone's going to be like on the same page as you. Like you have to think about the fact that you're like, you can't be as immature as I like to be with my humor, or
like or diplomatic.
You can't be all Tom DeLonge about it or whatever, and like be talking about like dicks all the time. Like
but someone like Fat Mike, like Fat Records is still doing well.
But he doesn't tweet from the Fat Records like Twitter account, things like that, you know, and like also his wife or his ex-wife runs it, and she seems mature.
So does Mike Park have a different Twitter, or does he do it all through the Asian Man Twitter?
He does both.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've had friends who work for him, and he's done a really good job, I think, of like letting people know that this is him, like he is Asian Man Records.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really interesting. I think Recess Records has done that as well.
Well, it's very easy to, in this age, to say something that gets you deplatformed, like whether it's political or whether it's about someone who you don't know the full story about. You have to be careful. Punk has become very diplomatic, and it's weird.
It is very weird. I would agree with that. I think it's a lot of overreacting to serious problems. I don't know. You've probably seen that Bo Burnham interview where they asked him about comedy.
No,
and they asked him about like, you know how Jerry Seinfeld was all like, "Oh, I don't perform at college campuses anymore. I'm Jerry Seinfeld." You like
because they're
too PC or whatever. And Bo Burnham was like, "Yeah, that's like kind of lame though," because he's like, "You're responding." They're overreacting to real problems, and I'd rather take people who care about real problems than like people who are racist or whatever and like comedy, you know. Okay. Like people who understand comedy but are okay with bigotry. I'd rather take the people who don't understand comedy yet and who
are not okay with bigotry.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, yeah, that's kind of what he said, and that's kind of how I feel about the punk scene. And I feel like as like a token millennial or whatever, who especially from a place like Boise where there's a lot of privilege. There's not a lot of diversity in Boise. And so there's a lot of privileged people trying to kind of prove how woke they are because, you know, they feel guilt over it or whatever. And in my opinion, and I think that a lot of the things that I thought were overreactions in the past, the way, or them kind of stroking their egos or overcompensating, has evened out in a lot of ways. Okay. And so I think the punk scene will do that, because eventually you just have to realize that people are not perfect, right? And like, and the punk scene, I think, is definitely, at least the modern millennial punk scene or DIY scene or whatever, has kind of like, it has dropped a lot of like, not a lot, but it's dropped some of that like no holds barred, you know, no, like it's dropped a lot of that stuff, I think, and been like, okay, let's keep each other accountable, let's talk about things. And it is definitely kind of weird still. There's still like buzzwords that float around, and there's still there's still the ego stroking, but I don't think it's as extreme as it was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
I think people, you know, I know some of you listening, you know, might not agree with my politics, but I think a lot of people in the punk scene, there's this reaction because people are frustrated with our president and that current situation. So it's like that community is like, okay, we have to be twice as militant and twice as real and stick together and stick up for women because they're not being represented in a mainstream platform. And all that stuff is good.
I think there's merit to that for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's unfounded whatsoever.
Yeah. And I think punk is the place where things are supposed to be extreme. And it's really cool to see someone like you with your label, where you're not having a corporation dictate what you can and can't say on your platform. So I would say that, like, with your label, that you can tweet whatever you want. I don't know. And if the bands don't like it, they're free to go just put their stuff on TuneCore themselves.
You're totally right. And no, it's not. I mean, it's more of like a maturity thing. It wasn't like a political thing that I was talking about. It's just like, okay, like example, Wicked Bears stayed at my house one time, right? I'm gonna call them out, and the guitarist wrote me a thank you note, and he drew a penis on it, and so this is like year 2 of the label, right? And I posted it on our Instagram, right? And then I was talking to my roommate. My current roommate was in a band in Boise that I put their last record out called Skittish It's, and he was like, yeah, that was the only thing I saw that I was like, I don't know about that. was the penis, on the thing. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to just like, because I am representing other people. Like I'm down to talk about my opinions. I'm down to be funny on my own time. But when I'm like representing the label, doing things from the label account, and
more professional,
and I still screw this up sometimes because I don't know. I grew up being a very scared kid. I think of like offending anyone, and now that I've kind of dropped that, I think I go over sometimes.
Well, it's like you go backstage at any venue, the graffiti is so foul, and the phallic drawings is just like so ridiculous. Like the what is it? The Auto Bar in Maryland, that top floor is just horrific. It's like literally 1,000 male genitalias drawn, eating each other and fighting, and it's just like so. It's like
it's creative though.
It's creative, but there's stuff that like it's like locker room humor that maybe people who follow on Instagram don't want to see that. So maybe that was your friend's point, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think that anyone really cares that much about little things like that. But I think there just is or if I'm poking fun at the bands, which especially if they're my friends, but it can make their band look bad if I'm doing that from the label account, which I've done. Like I have to be mindful of that stuff.
That's
because
true.
Like,
you can't be like, you could be like, Joe sure should wash his pants. You can't be like, Joe doesn't know how to tune his bass.
Right.
It's like depending if it's musical.
It really depends on the band, and like, I'll have a story for you after this is done.
My drummer John. Did you ever meet John?
Yeah, I did meet John.
So I have a song about how his house is messy.
Yeah, I know that song.
But I would never do a song like John can't play on beat, because John can play on beat. He's a badass musician. So it would be like lame to criticize someone's musical skills.
See, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that the bands I work with are generally good enough that I could poke a little bit of fun at their musical skills because they're all good, so it wouldn't no one would take it seriously. But I think if I was going to be like, I don't know, like John can't keep a steady girlfriend because he cheats on all, like things like that.
Not our John, like a different person.
Right.
Talking about their relationship.
No. I don't know John, but like, I mean, I've met him, but I don't know that's true. But you wouldn't make a joke like that about someone's like personal life. That would be really offensive to them.
Or like Felix, he does too much cocaine. Hey, Felix, you don't want to. Yeah, right. You don't want to put people on blast on things that will make it look like you're unprofessional working with them.
Right. And even if you're kidding and you think it's innocent enough, I've realized that sometimes they don't think that. So you just have to be careful because you are representing them, but then you're also running this DIY label where you and every other DIY label is trying to be Mike Park, but you realize you're not Mike Park. And so you can't get away with all that stuff because people don't know you like they know Mike Park. People don't associate Hidden Home Records with Rob Lanterman. They associate Hidden Home Records with the bands that I'm putting out, Right. And so even though there is a little bit of value, they kind of associate with my mail guy to an extent, actually, because I've just put his face on a bunch of stuff. And he's funny. People seem to like him. But
what is it? What is it? A mail guy?
My mail guy, yeah, Mike. He played in the band Carry On Kid.
Oh, and he sends out all your packages?
He's actually Miles' roommate right now. But he just keeps all the stuff in his garage.
So he does the inventory. Mm-hmm. So it ships from Boise.
Yeah,
Caldwell. Or Boise.
Caldwell, technically, but I don't know, it's a Boise. I'm a Boise guy. It's a Boise label. I'm not gonna let that go.
Because in New York, you don't want a ton of CD stock in your apartment. Boxes.
No, you don't. And Mike, as soon as we stopped living together, he was like, "I'm going to buy a house now." And he
bought a house.
He bought yeah. Have you been to Miles' house? Okay,
we almost stayed there.
I think you'd like Mike a lot. But.
Did Miles is moving to LA? Did you know this?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so Miles did our Kickstarter fulfillment. Thank you, Miles. And he had tons of boxes and stuff there, and it was a long process. But we're getting returns and stuff that or people change their addresses. So
that sucks.
He's moving to LA, so we're having his roommate Mike,
my mail guy,
is gonna have to mail stuff to LA for him.
Oh anyway, yeah, he'll be good at that.
That's cool. I mean, that's like Miles was nice to do that for us, and we paid him, but not like as we didn't pay him a ton, but we paid him what we could, and he really put a lot of time into that, and that's what the label thing is. It's not, this community is like, I don't know, you pay your dues by paying infinite time and not monetizing it. you're not going to make a dime for years probably.
That's a very nice way to put my expensive hobby.
Sometimes you break and something blows up. And
and in all honesty, I mean, there's been a lot of things that we've talked about that I've been like, oh man, like I can't believe this is coming out. I'm so stupid. Like I can't believe I did things that way. And I realize it more when I say it out loud, but like my philosophy on it is like, I started this label because I want to help bands that I like. And I have a pretty low bar for what they do, in order for me to work with them. Like I'm not going to put out vinyl for a band that's not going to tour.
Okay.
For instance, right? But like, or if it's a band I really want to work with because I like them and they're from my scene and they're friends and I think their music needs to be documented, which is very Discord. The more I learn about Discord, but it's like the idea of documenting these moments in time, And like my roommate's band was one of those bands, Skittish Hits. But anyway, so if I'm gonna, like, my threshold is pretty low, but like the way I look at it is some releases break even, some don't. I'm just kind of here to help the bands, but I need to but what I've changed is the way that I make deals with bands. So I make it so at some point I'll hopefully be able to at least break even. Now it'd be awesome if every band sold out the way that Casual Friday or Audio Karate did. And they're just not going to. I don't feel like most labels sell out on every release either.
Do you print 1,000 of each one or 500?
No way. Like we'll print like 100 CDs or 50 CDs depending on the band. Like it really depends on what they do because so many bands will come to me, even bands I haven't heard of, bands I've heard of, and they'll be like, "Hey, can you work with us?" And I'll be like, if I like it, I'll be like, "Let's talk." And they don't have any tour plans. So I'm like, if you're just playing in your local town, prove to me and not to sound like like a badass or like a jerk or anything, but like prove to me that you can sell 50 copies in your hometown and then let's print 100. Right. Because I don't think that the East Coast has been kind of an interesting experience for me watching the differences between scenes over here and scenes from Boise or scenes from maybe a town like Salt Lake.
How would you describe some of the basic differences?
I think that people are just motivated and they believe they can do it here. Not even believe they can make it, but they can set those goals for themselves. Like, we're going to sell out of our CDs and they'll do it. And then like in some of these other towns, they're like, oh, we forgot to bring our merch to the show.
Right. Right. Well, that's New York also being the home of punk rock, right? It's
right.
Like the culture and people take stuff seriously. And yeah.
But I don't know if it's just New York. I think it's also just like, because everywhere around here, I wonder if it's something to do with touring. Because everywhere around here is so close. So if you start a band, it's not hard to tour here. If you're in the middle of nowhere, your dreams get shot down a little bit.
City. To
right.
Boise, right?
To Boise it is, yeah. And there are some really great bands from Boise but none of them sell their merch unless they're on tour. You know?
But Rob, like I don't sell physical stuff for the most part unless I'm on the road or unless we do a Kickstarter where people pre-order it.
Well, what I mean is like they don't even take their stuff to shows to sell. That's what I mean.
And that means that's not professional.
But yeah, but there's also I think there's also a really big local support around here, and there's not in Boise, in my opinion.
And
at least for the punk rock part of it, the
people in Boise don't come to see each other's bands.
Not as much.
But didn't Miles, like with Big O, wouldn't he always bring like hella people or nah? Was it hit or miss?
Miles did, yeah.
Because he'd call everyone.
He kind of built his own little niche.
He's such a cool dude.
To be completely honest, like
that's different because he's sonically very interesting.
He's got a really big chip on his shoulder about the Boise scene, though. Like he doesn't, he's kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to throw him under the bus, but he doesn't really.
That's why he's moving to LA, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't even know he was moving to LA.
Doesn't he have a song about that about why how the scene's done him wrong?
Yeah, I've got a chip on my shoulder, and I've been blah blah.
What's
blah,
that song again?
I don't know. I know the.
I think I'm on that song.
I think you are too. It's the one about
this song goes out to people who wouldn't book.
Right? Yeah.
Chill.
Well, Well, but he's right. Like that's the truth, about, and I love Boise. Like since moving to New York, I'm more motivated to help the Boise scene than I was before. Like
that's great, man.
New York doesn't need someone. I mean, it always needs people, but there's so many, and Boise right now, if I can just like brag on Boise for a second, there's like all these young kids starting bands now and like going to each other's shows and throwing shows by themselves that like just weren't there when I was there. And even if like the bands aren't that good, like I just think that's so cool that they're
community.
doing that. Yeah, that community. And those bands they're gonna start good bands later, but they're all finding independent music and they're all starting these bands, and like those are the kind of bands that I'm actually really interested in working with right now, because those are the kind of bands I feel like I could help them, and they could push the Boise music scene into more community.
It's really interesting to me because it seems like the dichotomy now with music is you do the scene, you play locally, you sell merch, you try to get your friends to come out, or you just go hard, make a YouTube channel, buy a green screen, and do 1,000 rap videos about Marvel or Star Wars or you know what I'm saying? Like with the nerdcore stuff, like video game stuff, or you become like a theme band and just really go hard on YouTube, and you can monetize it, and it doesn't matter where you're from, and you have no allegiances or connections to a physical place. And it seems like those are the two extremes where music culture is going. And I really obviously am a fan of the former because that's where I come from. But I've also like loved YouTube and been able to use that for my own capacity.
Oh, for sure.
But it's interesting, man, because it's like, okay, so Miles, it seems like he's pivoting to do more of a mainstream thing, rebranding and like kind of like higher quality videos. And I think that's smart because then you're not relying on like your 20 fans in the city or 100 fans to like always come see you. Because if you play in the same town, more than once or twice a year, your numbers are going to definitely go down a little.
Yeah, they are. Well, I'm just trying to think of on his level because I've played a lot of those shows with him. I've played Salt Lake twice in a year. He played Salt Lake 3 or 4 times in a year one time.
It was great.
Well, because he did one date and then he played 2 sold out shows with Froggy Fresh.
Okay, so when you're headlining, it's different than supporting someone, I guess, right? If you're supporting someone who's got the draw, then that can be actually help, right?
Right, because then I went back with him later. I guess it wasn't that year. It was like right at the beginning of the next year. But these
was it Kilby Court? What was the venue?
I don't know if it was Kilby Court. I've been to Kilby Court. I love that venue. But no, I don't know where it was. It might have been Kilby Court actually. But he played Salt Lake and then he played Provo.
Oh.
And so Provo is the big BYU town. Like
Mormons love Froggy Fresh.
Yeah, they do because
he's clean.
Because he's clean. Do Mormons love MC Lars too?
I think they do. Yeah. Shout out to the Mormons. Mormons love the Aquabats.
Because they are Mormon.
Yeah, which is great. Shout out to the whole Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, I actually have. Yeah, the punk scene in Salt Lake is really interesting to me. I'm not Mormon, but watching the dichotomy between like these Mormon kids who are into punk and are kind of more progressive Mormons, and then watching these other bands that are either a lot of them are really atheistic because they grew up Mormon. And they just flipped on it. So it's really interesting, like seeing the songwriting that comes out of that. There's a lot of really good bands in Salt Lake. They've got a cool scene, man.
That's awesome.
I'm really stoked on it. I almost put out another Salt Lake band this year. I probably put out more Salt Lake bands than Boise bands, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's tight.
Yeah, I love it all.
So, okay, but Miles, it's been interesting because you've played bass in different bands and worked with different people and seen their approach. And what always intrigued me about, this is the last thing we'll say about Miles, is that
you're fine.
He like you said, you have to hit the road to get an audience, and he's done that as much as he can. He knows it's an opportunity. That's why it was so dope that you guys did that whole tour with us, where some shows were great, some were not, but we survived it, and I think it helped his business grow a little bit. I hope
think it did too.
Yeah, and that's just the thing. It's like people remember that live experience, and punk and indie music is about, we're doing this because we have to and we want to, and we know that it's not sponsored by Budweiser, but it's here.
Right.
And that's why, I'll never want to sponsor on the podcast, and I'm grateful for the audience that listens and all the Patreon supporters, and it's like, okay, well,
you don't have a sponsor on it?
No.
At all? So
No.
and you're not going to? You're just going to use Patreon?
Yeah, I shout out the Patreon. The Patreon people support it. So the new people,
awesome.
every week I shout out them. So this is brought to you by these people.
I love that.
So yeah, and it's kind of like this, your brand becomes your genuine personality. And I feel like that's, knowing you, that's something that works well for you. You're a likable guy.
I hope. I mean, I guess I hope so. I think that I'm just kind of over impressing people at this point, but I'm definitely, like, when I think about my friend put it really well to me. He's like, I think the thing I realized about Hidden Home is that all the bands are really good songwriters. Like they're all kind of songwritery punk bands, which doesn't mean they all sound like Red City Radio or like a folky kind of a thing. It just means that they're probably a little bit poppy and upbeat. Even if they're like more of an emo band, there's kind of a flow to it that way. And I don't know. I hope that people can enjoy that or see that. Maybe they don't. Yeah. I don't know.
So what would you say the most predominant genre is on your label?
I just call it a punk label. I don't really worry about it. I guess pop punk is I work in SEO, and I recently found out that
that's your day job.
Yeah, I recently found out that we are ranking number 1 for Boise pop punk. So
hey!
I guess that's a thing. But
what's the biggest band ever from Boise? Built to Spill.
Yeah, Built to Spill. Then there's Paul Revere and the Raiders, and actually Youth Lagoon is from Boise.
What's the other one?
Youth Lagoon. Have you ever heard Youth Lagoon? Okay.
But Paul Revere and the Raiders covered Louie Louie.
Did they?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was one of their big hits.
I don't know anything about them. I just know they're from Boise. Boise doesn't have a lot of bands that are broken out.
Otis Julius.
Wait,
what about hip hop? Is there any rap from it, or is it too?
No, there's rap. There's rap. There's some cool rap there.
Anyone that I might know?
I don't know if you'd know them. I've actually worked with a few guys and went to school with a few guys. Andy O, Axiom, The Wise. Those are people I work with.
Would you ever put out a rap album, or is that too like left field and weird?
No, I've thought about it. I have a friend who used to play in punk bands who asked me, and then I actually had this girl who hit me up to put her rap album out, and she was really good. And I told her, like, hey, if you can't find a label, like, we'll talk. But the thing is, like, I don't know what I would do with rap. It'd be like starting over with the PR stuff. The way that, like, it took me, and every time you do something new with a label, like recording your finances for, or I guess catching up at this point, but or doing the PR thing, like making your list or making your radio list or your distributor list, which is something both of those are things I'm working on right now. Like, anytime you do it, it takes so much time to establish that initial thing. And I guess I would put a rap album out.
But they know your genre.
Well, I just don't know how I would promote it because I'm not so savvy on like the history of rap and like the culture of rap.
It would have to be rap with like a live rock band to make sense.
I think I'd like it better that way. It's not that I don't like rap. Like, I like some old rap. I like Nas and NWA and stuff, like the classics, if you will. But
do you feel like you get like super bored and like angry at rap, new rap?
At new rap?
Well, I don't know.
Is this because we had the texting conversation about emo rap?
Well, what do you think about that whole movement?
I think that you are someone who's helped me be a little bit less jaded. So I think that and honestly, I just don't like it. But but I think that you definitely, when you pointed out the DIY aspect of it, I really kind of related to it, and I thought it was cool, and I kind of gave it a little bit of a listen. It's still not something I like, but I can appreciate the ethic behind it.
A lot of it celebrates things that maybe I don't agree with personally.
Right. And that was always the argument against rap growing up. Do you remember when there was like that whole I don't like rap and country was like the thing that people would always say. Like my first Warped Tour when I was 14, I saw a kid wearing a shirt that said "Rap plus country equals crap."
Oh, okay,
and I was like, okay, and
rap and country equals Yellow Wolf. Now they kind of merged, right? That's the whole movement, the country rap stuff.
But the argument was always like, oh, well, they're just singing about weed and bitches and money and partying, and then I realized like. One, like we all listen, like all those people listen to classic rock. so they don't get any room to talk about like misogyny in music and like these shallow topics. And then two, or drugs, even like all that stuff, glorified drug use, you know? And then I also just think that what I didn't realize at the time is that there's just kind of some racist connotations under the surface. So even if the people who believed those things or were told those things weren't being racist, it probably kind of came from a racist place of like, because there's just such this like, there was just such an opposition to rap music for glorifying those things, but which is like, I guess like a predominantly like black genre, right? But not for like white music.
Right? To say like, I like all music but rap. That has a little racism in it.
Yeah, I think that for some people it does for sure.
Yeah.
Like I like if you genuinely don't like it, then whatever. But I think that, but I guess just like if you're gonna talk down on like a predominantly black genre for the same things that you and something you like, you're a hypocrite.
Right.
And so there's something weird there, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing when people are like, I don't like rap music, but I like you. People say that to me. I'm like, oh, don't say that to me. And no, I was kind of playing devil's advocate because I meant like, I wonder if the ethos of Hidden Home Records and like the family thing and printing physical copies, that stuff is like, and touring, that stuff is very antithetical to like the new, I feel like, aesthetic and business model of rap is that you just make YouTube stuff and you do a lot of it. You collab with people who are big and maybe don't necessarily tour unless something blows up, and you just put out tons of stuff and you don't ever print physical stuff. And a lot of, I feel like a lot of rappers like I've toured with and stuff don't have merch. It's just a different level. Yeah. Bigger rappers, you know, like when we open for Young Jock or Snoop, like they didn't have merch because it's like, well,
Snoop didn't have merch. He didn't even have like shirts with his face.
No, I mean, I guess there is a lot of Snoop Dogg merch, but like he didn't. It was a college show, so he didn't have like a merch booth. Right?
Oh, okay.
So it's different. Yeah. It's different. I don't know. That's like, I wonder how many. Yeah, like if a rap someone to sign with your label and work with you, they have to be like on your team. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe hip hop is a lot of individualism. I've seen that in the nerdcore scene. Everyone wants to be like the big fish, so we collaborate, but we don't really work together business wise unless we're touring. You know what I mean? Signing with like, if Frontalot had a label, it would seem really weird to sign to it. It would seem like ridiculous because it would mean like his business model makes more sense than mine. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah, because we all try to build our own platforms. You know,
Nerdcore is so interesting to me because I didn't know it was really like a community until we did that tour with you, and it was definitely like, it was really cool though. And I think because it was the Lars tour.
Yeah.
And then we were opening
Two Big Fish.
And there was so much, the racial unity in the audience and like the diversity in the audience was really cool, first of all, 'cause especially coming from like a predominantly like punk rock background. So where it's mostly
Boise punk rock.
Yeah, well, Boise too. Yeah. It's very non-diverse, but even touring, you know, there's not a ton of diversity.
Right.
At least racial diversity. So that was really cool, and it was very unifying and very awesome. But like the other thing was just like these people like were just so excited to be there and were just enjoying themselves so much, and for this music that like for this type of music that I was so unfamiliar with. So it was just it was fun. It was really cool. And like cool. And they were so positive. There was so much I guess that's like the biggest thing that I took away from it was like the positivity.
Yeah, that's they're happy to be at the show, and they actually, when the first band goes on, they're in the front because they are like, I think a lot of nerdcore fans don't go to a lot of shows, so it's an exciting thing when they do. Yeah. So like when Big O would go on, they'd all be in the front, and you know what I mean?
Right.
And that was dope, and they are very positive. We couldn't ask for like a better audience, and that therefore, so the branding there is just like the metrics of like Spotify recommending the similar ones to each other and Pandora and everything. Right. But it's like, that is kind of an intersection of old school and new school, like media, right? Versus, but I don't know. Imagine if there were a label that we were all on and that label had a lot of funding. Like, I don't know. That would have been interesting if that had happened 10 years ago. Would it have helped or would it have hurt the scene? I don't know.
Like the streaming stuff?
Yeah. Like if a record label had signed all of us and like funded our records, like the bigger artists, and then branded it together, maybe we'd all have collectively more YouTube views. I don't know.
Okay, so can we get into your history a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, so the first time I heard MC Lars was on a podcast. It was on
Mark Hoppus's?
The Mark Hoppus podcast.
Hi, Mark. I know you're listening.
Yeah, I think the first time I told you that, you were like, I still haven't met that fool or something.
Yeah, I haven't met him. We used to email a lot. He's very nice, but I've never met him IRL.
Ooh, okay. Well, your time is coming, hopefully. But yeah, I remember it was download this song. And the only reason I remember that was because he was like, we don't necessarily agree with MC Lars on his point of view before we play this song.
Yeah.
But
that's what you would say if your mansion was paid for by a major label.
Right. And so that song is about like how you should go ahead and download music illegally. Yes?
Yes, and then support the band by seeing them live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, cool. I've watched you play that song a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know all the words, I guess. So, okay, but were you on a label at that time?
I had a management company that had a distribution deal through, I guess it was Universal. So Horse Records was distributed through Universal because my management company, Network, had deals with stuff that they pressed, they got in stores.
Really? Okay, so you've always been on Horse Records, but you had the distribution of a major label.
Right. So but that was because but they weren't paying for anything. They were just shipping it to record stores.
Yeah, but still, that's like the dream, isn't it?
That was tight.
And to be completely independent, but also have like the power of like a major.
No, it was a really good situation. And it kind of the smoke and mirrors of like MC Lars, Mr. DIY. Like I had, Network at their height, they managed Coldplay and Avril Lavigne and Sum 41 and Brand New. And so it was like those connections helped me achieve this viral like recognition in the early days of social media because everyone wanted to do a favor for Network so that they would give them a premiere of the Sum 41 video or whatever. So that's why people like Mark Hoppus heard my stuff because I guess Brand New had opened for Blink and Tom, my former manager, got Mark my music.
Tom DeLonge, your former manager.
No, Tom Gates. Yeah, Tom DeLonge. Right. So that was like the story there. So
okay,
it was just through connections, but it was kind of like that thing of like friends helping friends. I never signed a deal with a major label, but I had meetings with them, but it would just never. I don't know.
Would you have signed to a major label?
That's a good question. If a label, when I started, if a label had been like, here's $100,000, like we want to get behind you, and they had a cool roster, it's a lot of money. That was like what you would. That's like the minimum of what they would be offering back in the day. That's what bands would get. So yeah, I may have, but that money would have dried up quick, and I wouldn't be getting the streaming royalties then because they would have owned the masters.
Right.
So. And they wouldn't have wanted me to do a song about how you should steal music.
Well, okay, so that's why I asked, because for some reason I thought you were on Universal at one point. So I was like, how did he get away with that? Like
that was and that song charted in Australia. And I remember like the press people there, I did interviews. They're like, well, you have major label distribution, but you're telling people to steal your music. This is inauthentic. And I was like, oh, it gets complicated. So
what's the worst country you've ever been to as far as press questions?
Like questions poking holes in your integrity. I remember we did this thing in the Netherlands when this nerdcore documentary premiered there, and they kind of insinuated that it was like a hipster thing that we were like putting on a fake thing. To be nerdy was just to get people to see us, but no one cared,
Yeah, that sucks.
I don't know.
That's so dumb.
I mean, you just got to keep it moving and be joyful.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate honesty. People always talk about it in interviews, so
yeah. Interviews are. I wonder how much they help. We had a whole bunch of press for the Dewey Decibel, and I think it's cool that the word's out there, and it's cool for us to post them. But do you find that press helps you stream and sell records, or is it more the touring and the like music videos and stuff?
Touring helps selling. Touring helps to sell, and sometimes Reddit. I don't know why. I mean. I had my account banned for a while because I would just go spam Reddit with all our releases, like
bad boy.
Like every time we'd put, yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know if I should care or not, but like I know that Reddit's like this important community and it's like a safe haven for the internet or whatever. But like
it's just so active and big,
right? But there's like all these. So I followed all these music Reddits, I like Reddit, but I just never used it. And then I started putting releases out and realized, oh, I can just go down and like post in the release. And then eventually I have to wait 10 minutes. But the thing is, it works. Like people, people listen to that
That's
stuff.
Smart.
And so, especially if you get onto like a tape collector thing and you just put a tape out, or like a vinyl collector and you just put a 7-inch out, like things like that are really cool and people respond to that. It's kind of from what I can tell, it's one of the only places on the internet where people are still like active in a forum that isn't really strictly social media.
And isn't monetized by a corporation.
Right.
Like when I've done AMAs, it's been so great. The reaction. Yeah. I did 3, I think. And like people are very engaged on that.
It's a community. It's very punk rock when you think about it.
And it's fun. And it's like, so there's a tape trading one?
Yeah. Oh, dude, this one guy, he wanted like 4 of the tapes we had. And so he sent me like an unopened double Mountain Goats LP for 4 of our tapes.
Dang.
So instead of, but I don't usually do trading. I usually like market it, or like I was looking for other labels to trade with at the time, because one of the things I did really early on was I traded with a lot of labels. I traded with Paper and Plastic. I traded with It's Alive. Things like kind of decently bigger labels that were they were really nice and they traded with me. But this guy was like, I don't run a label, but here, I'll send you like this LP because I like these tapes you had. I don't even know how he heard about all those tapes, but he did. So
good job, Rob. The word is out. You heard you on another podcast.
I haven't done a lot of interviews. Some of the bands I've been have done a good amount of interviews. I don't know. I think okay. So here's my theory, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's certain sites that still have built-in followings. And people, because you can watch the play count when you stream something with them,
like World Star Hip Hop,
or
for example,
right? Or in my experience, like New Noise Magazine's website, or Dying Scene, or Punk News, and those sites will still people are still active on those websites, and they'll listen to the bands.
Is Absolute Punk still around? Nah.
No, he became like Chorus FM. So that's
Jason Tate.
Yeah, that's the same guy.
Wow, okay.
I don't know if I've ever talked to him. Anyway, but yeah, there's a few sites that have that like credibility still, but I still am not selling things. Even if people comment and they're like, this is rad, or we get a lot of plays.
So you're saying if you get interviews on those high profile sites, it helps with brand awareness potentially.
Right. It helps with brand awareness, but I don't really see a big sales increase.
What's the biggest press you ever got for any of your artists or releases? Like the biggest platform, and how did that work?
So
translate?
I'm not going to count the Audio Karate one because Wiretap works with Earshot. If you know, Earshot. Okay, cool. Mike Cubulos, I think, and he's rad. But I honestly, the first Wicked Bears EP, I don't know why I had, how'd you get that article or that post? What? Oh! You're talking about one post, like
yeah.
Not like the overall.
Yeah, like one big like mainstream-ish Rolling Stone cover.
I would say I don't know.
It's kind of cool. You can't quantify because then it means that you're just like fighting the good fight. It's not like
we did the Casual Friday record on. What was it? We did the Casual Friday record on Punktastic, and they got a lot of plays there. I also spammed it on Facebook though. I did the same. I did the Reddit thing through like Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Which takes a lot of time, but it works. Is the thing. Like people, if you post it in the right place, like it just takes a lot of effort, and like that way you might sell a little bit more.
Right.
But anyway, so probably either that or the other thing I just thought of was the last release we did, which is by this band Urban Outfielders from Boise. They're like a baseball themed pop punk band.
Are you playing that band?
I used to.
Okay.
Off the record, I used to.
Urban Outfielders.
It's a persona band, so it's like
you dress in baseball clothes.
Yeah, my character got killed off. He had a steroid overdose. So, but yeah. Anyway, point being, that EP was on Punk News, and that was our first stream on Punk News, and that was like a big deal to me because I grew up on the Punk News website and like learning about bands and reading reviews and stuff like that. And that I don't know why that site hasn't updated its code for like 20 years, but like regardless, people are still active on
retro.
it. People are still active on it, even with like a broken text and everything. So
let me ask you a question, Rob.
Please.
What advice would you give an artist? And I wonder this. Sometimes I've wondered, like, if I were to, I mean, I can't do this because I have podcasts to the Patreon and I'm very active online. But like, I imagine if I were to disappear for a year and go in a cabin and just write like 50 songs and put the best 9 out, that would be an amazing album. And like in the era of albums and 90s culture, that's what the bands would do. And that would then allow your career to progress. Is that possible still? Is that an antiquated idea? Is that like idealistic? Like what does a band, how can a band create the best art possible and then translate that into a monetized career as a musician? That's my question.
I don't know why you're asking me that, because I just told you all of the worst things about all of my business, quote unquote, mistakes,
right?
And how I'm trying to overcome them, which I'm not over that hump yet. Like I don't think bands lose anything I think they gain by working with me, but I'm not really gaining monetary amounts.
But the idea is like, can you make a record that is so great that the indie promo and like 1 or 2 videos will then translate into a career for a band or a solo artist? Is that possible?
I think it's possible, but I think it's lucky too,
Like Macklemore, it happened for him, but he had huge, big agents working for him.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I think of a band like, I don't know how DIY all these bands are, but I think of a band like, Mom Jeans? Have you heard of Mom Jeans?
Them, yes. Yeah. I think from you.
From me? Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't really know those guys super well. I know a couple of them a little bit, but they're a band that blew up on Reddit, working with an East Coast label, and they just now,
they tour a lot.
A lot.
And they're real cool, I bet.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I don't have a problem with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think touring still matters. Is kind of what
is touring like. I wonder if
I think touring and going viral is probably what matters.
There you go.
Like you think about a band like Modern Baseball, who played a bike shop in my hometown, and then they had like a video get a lot of recognition, and people really liked the song.
So an amazing video is the key.
I think it's
an amazing song,
good songs and good videos. Because I don't think Mom Jeans had a video for their first record. They just got lucky.
That's rare.
Yeah. They just got on Listen to Us on Reddit, and it just blew up. But touring does so much. Like the band Just Friends, which was an Open Door Records band at one point, and then they went to Counterintuitive, and now they're on Pure Noise. Like that band, their first record could have been huge, but really, I think what worked for them was that they toured a lot.
Did they tour headline, or were they opening for bigger people?
I mean, they were DIY touring, so
that's huge, man. That's so brave. And
they toured down they toured down to Fest. My buddy Dan, who kind of runs the label, got them onto Fest, was able to do that. And he runs his label the way I run mine. He doesn't break even on every release. He doesn't I don't know, he's not super like whatever. He's not making bands sign contracts and having them like do anything crazy or pay him back, but he believed in their band, and they toured a lot, and then they sold out of their copies, and then he made more for them, and then they signed, and then they toured a lot, and they went down to Fest, and then they signed to a different label, a different DIY label, and then now they're on Pure Noise, which has Less Than Jake right now, and it has Masked Intruder right now, and The Story So Far. These
big boys,
really big bands. Oh, but you know what? The other thing about, I don't know, I think good songs matter a lot. Just putting a good record out,
right?
In a band, I know we're probably going over time, but in a band like Just Friends' case, they put out basically like a funk record for their second LP. They started as like a pop punk band, and they put out like a weird record. So I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it. But.
So I guess my question is, does getting in a van and DIY touring, does it give you credibility and like have people in the scene respect you, or do people be like, you're wasting your time, go freaking put out more SoundCloud and YouTube?
No, people respect the hell out of it.
I think that's great, but I guess I fear that like the young generation doesn't care unless it's like trended on YouTube main page music.
I just don't believe that at all.
I love that, Rob. Thank you for saying that.
I just think that people, if you put out a good, you need to be on social media. I'm assuming.
Uh-huh.
I mean, what do I know? I'm kind of saying this from afar, but like,
you're an outlier.
I'm an outlier. I mean, Casual Friday did really good, but Casual Friday hasn't toured a lot, so our sales have gone way down. You know, I don't know. I think if Casual Friday played Fest, they did like a 3-week tour out to Fest and back. But I think that since they aren't touring a lot, they're we haven't technically sold out of all their records. We've gotten really close. Some of the other labels sold out, but I think that if they were touring and playing more shows, we would have sold out by now.
And that's expensive. And back in the day, labels would pay for bands to be on tour, right? They'd give them tour support.
If they were a big enough label, I think they would.
Yeah, and you can't do that when you're trying to recoup your costs.
I'm kind of just trying to live in New York right now.
But yeah. How many do you put out a year? New albums?
The last 2 years, I've put out a lot of. The last 3 years, I put out a lot of albums, and then this year, I haven't put out much.
Well, how many years have you been going since 2015?
2015. Right? I've done 25 right now.
Oh, geez. So about 4 years.
I've probably been like 6 a year out at one point.
Jeez. Do you think you'll do more or less
this year
in your life? Like, do you want to keep putting out lots of albums, or do you want to put out like a few?
I want to put out like 3 to 4 a year, so I can really focus efforts on those ones.
That's still a lot. Like
it is, but I just want to do that so I can really focus all my PR efforts and all that stuff on. But for a while, it was getting going, and we were getting press, and then more and more bands came to me that I liked. I was like, oh, cool, let's do it. Oh, cool, let's do it. Oh, cool, let's do it. And then I was like, okay, this isn't working out as good as I thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway.
What's your plan? So 10 years, where do you want to be? What's your dream for the label?
In 10 years, I want to still be able to put out a record here and there and have people listen to it. That's my dream. So if I have kids and I'm not able to, be doing the label all the time or whatever, because I don't know, I don't see this as a profession,
Yeah.
But if we could build a following and I guess build a network where people like the records and they're buying them or at least listening to them, and I could still help out bands here and there, I think that would be my dream.
We always do physical releases. Is that kind of the charm of it?
Yeah.
Hey,
how'd you figure that out?
I was just wondering, because it's like, I just wonder. I these days it's like everyone's like, oh, I don't do physical. But you seem to be printing a lot still.
Probably a better it's probably a better business model. But I do the label the way that I would like it as a fan.
That's great.
And the only things I really compromise are if it's something that like the band wants specifically.
Okay.
Like if they're like, hey, can you help us get onto this website or whatever? And I'm like, I don't really like that website. I'll still try to get them onto that website, that's not a big deal to me at all. But I really try to do physical copies for every release.
Do you do more CDs or more vinyl?
CDs, because vinyl's more expensive at this point. And bands don't, if a band isn't touring, I'm not going to get them vinyl.
Right.
I'm like, and I don't care about that. I have no guilty feelings about that.
So you do more vinyl or cassettes?
Cassettes at this point.
Yeah.
But vinyl, the problem is vinyl sells better, but if a band's not touring, then they're still not selling vinyl. So instead of being out whatever, a few hundred, not even a few $100, instead of being out like $100, you're out like $1,000
with vinyl.
With vinyl.
Yeah. What? So how many units do you usually do a vinyl if you love the band and they think they're going to sell them?
I have done 250.
And what is that per unit? $5 a unit?
I mean, it depends on
non-gatefold, non-colored disc.
For me, it's been for like an LP. It's been about $8 to $9.
Oh, so much
per unit.
That's expensive. So then they have to sell it for like $25 to see any profit. Mm-hmm. That's what we sell our vinyl for, and it's expensive, but it's so expensive to make.
And just to be clear, you don't have to tour all the time to sell your vinyl. Though, the band of Wicked Bears has been really good about that. Like we got them vinyl because their record did so good,
Yeah.
And
how many months a year do you think a band should be touring?
I mean, it depends on what they want to do,
Like 3 months a year?
I don't know, because it's really hard to say for bands at like a DIY level who live in the middle of nowhere. Like, if you want to go really hard and just make a career out of it, then do it, I guess. But I don't know if most bands want to do that. Most bands I talk to aren't like, oh, we're gonna make a career out of this. They're
right.
Even the bands that have blown up, I don't think that they started the band being like, oh, we're gonna make a career out of it. I think that it's just kind of happened. And I bet some of those bands signing to those bigger labels that are kind of from the scene I'm sort of in, I would bet that they still have day jobs when they get home as well.
Because then it's, I guess in that case, your art isn't. There's not so much pressure to like keep the band together, and it's like every song you write, oh, this has to be a hit. That sucks, right? If you're like art, when you make art because you want to and because from the heart, it's the best. If it's like trying to be the next Green Day, you're probably gonna be disappointed.
Yeah, and I think that there's like a real, I don't know. It's been interesting because I kind of assumed growing up and being naive that like everyone was gonna be on the in agreement with that. But now I know people who are like, well, you kind of play the game too, and you kind of do this. But I find that like, at least for me, the bands that I end up liking or disliking, like the bands that grow old on me are the ones that seem inauthentic to me.
Right.
So if you can fool me good enough, I guess good for you. But like, I just doesn't. If you sound like a parody of your band, then I don't want to listen to it anymore. If you sound like you're cashing in on what made you popular, then. But I'm a music fan and I'm a musician, so it's a little bit different for me,
Right. So there's always. I was talking to Neil from Cuckoo Kangaroo about this. That there's a time when you should quit. Sometimes it's good to know when enough is enough. You know what I mean? And
interesting.
Some great bands were like, okay, we're done, or to go back to Nirvana, if someone dies, then their catalog becomes very like special and untainted, right?
So we just need to kill band members.
Exactly. Just like cut their brakes in the tour van.
Right.
No, don't do that. Don't do it. Rob, don't do it.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Where can fools look up your flavor? Where can people find you?
You can go to Facebook. Obviously, if you want to hear the bands, just go to hiddenhomerecords.bandcamp.com.
And then what about on Facebook? It's just Hidden Home Records?
Yeah, Facebook, Hidden Home Records. Twitter, I think it's Hidden Home Rex.
How about Rex with an X or
CS?
Okay, here's another question. Instagram.
Hidden Home Records.
How about Snapchat?
I do not use Snapchat for the label.
I deleted Snapchat. Do you use Snapchat? I deleted it.
I do use Snapchat, but I don't use it very much anymore. And now that Instagram has those stories, I'm not using Snapchat.
They cannibalized Snapchat.
Yeah, they did. Snapchat still has some pretty cool filters, though, and I don't know. It can be fun for some things, but
sometimes I just prefer to chat with people. That's why I do the MC Lars podcast. Snap. Rob, this has been a really good interview. Do you have any questions for me as we wind down?
But like, I want to talk to you about C.S. Lewis, and I want to talk. I want to talk to you.
We both love C.S. Lewis,
right? And I want to talk to you about like Adam and his Package.
Why don't we talk about this on the air, dog?
Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Adam and his Package. You got into them recently.
Well, kind of. Yeah, I think it was before I met you, but I read that Noisy article that Dan Ozzie wrote about them. Shout out to Dan Ozzie. He doesn't know me, but he's probably my favorite journalist as far as like music journalism goes.
That's the Vice article about his timelessness.
Yeah, and I remember listening to what's that song? if you're the owner of the Washington Redskins, you're a cock or something.
Right.
I thought,
yeah.
And it's kind of it's kind of like so juvenile in the way he puts it, but it's addressing like a really serious topic. So I thought that was really cool. And I just reading about his DIY ethics, I was like, oh, this is sick. And
I love his politics and his melodies and how he used comedy to speak bigger truths. That was such an influence on me.
I listened to your podcast with him, and I know you guys were talking about that.
That's cool.
Yeah. No,
Thanks for listening to that, dude.
Yeah. I've listened to a few of them. I listened to the Vinny from the Movie Life one.
Did you listen to the Big O one?
Yeah, I did.
Did we talk about you?
My name was dropped, I think.
That's what's up.
I don't really care, but
C.S. Lewis. We've talked about that because we're both Christians, and we both love the Narnia.
Well, I actually finished my college degree with a C.S. Lewis class.
Are you serious?
I needed one. I literally needed one credit, and my college wouldn't waive it. So,
did you read Mere Christianity?
I did read Mere Christianity.
What do you think of that book?
I like it a lot. It's really kind of inspired my my faith. I guess I should actually really quickly say that Hidden Home like isn't a Christian label, because people are gonna hear this and be like, "Oh, this it's like Christian punk." It's not. Most of the bands are not religiously affiliated.
That's fine. That's good.
Yeah, but anyway,
what does mere mean in Mere Christianity? It's spelled MERE. Like, it's not like a mirror. Like I'm brushing my teeth.
It's like basic. It's like baseline Christianity. It's like, so if you want to know what Christianity is and like why people believe in it and what it's like, and like what it means to be a Christ follower, if you will, then this is it. This is Mere Christianity. This is and he kind of makes a point for like why he thought people should believe it. Then he goes into what it is, and I don't know. It's a good book. I think it's good at taking complicated issues and breaking them down into simple words.
What about the Screw Tape Letters?
Yeah, I read that in the class.
What's that about?
It's about.
Because I'm not so familiar with that one.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. It's about demons who are after this. It's like letters from like a chief demon to like a I don't know, like his associate or whatever. Yeah, and it's about them trying to ruin this guy's life. That one's really good, even if you don't believe in like heaven or hell or like God or whatever. Because the thing I like about C.S. Lewis a lot is that he's very intellectual, and so for me, it made me really aware of my own thoughts, and made me very self-aware reading a book like that. And so, yeah, I don't know. C.S. Lewis is cool because he was really into philosophy, and he was also really and he's just a very like reasonable dude for the most part. He's dead, but
yeah. And I think what turns a lot of people off about religion is the dogmatic. You have to believe this because we said so.
Right.
Don't question it. Mm-hmm. And that's like, well, why should I?
And there's actually a quote in the Screw Tape Letters where he says, where he basically said, like, the one demon is talking to the other demon. He's like, don't let this guy use his brain. Meaning, like, thinking is a good thing, is what C.S. Lewis is arguing in that. Is like, it's a good thing to think and to analyze things and to research things and to try to find what's true and to question things. Like it's always good to do that, you know?
Yeah. It's crucial.
It's so crucial.
If you don't think, you're not, if anyone, like your religion should always think about it. And yeah, that's something that's important.
And I know that like growing up in evangelicalism, as they call it now, I guess that's always what they called it, but now it's almost like a weird post thing. But like growing up as an evangelical, I don't think I'd still be a Christian if I still related to the emotional side of that, because so much of it was based on emotion. I just can't do it anymore. Like I can't keep up with the emotion of a belief, like or of like a culture. It just
the non-examined emotion.
Yeah, and it just feels so fake. Like going to church is hard for me. Like I still go to church, but like the music's really hard for me because so often it's so like emotionally driven. But yeah, I'm always kind of like, well, what are you thinking about? Like, what are you, or like, right. what's the backbone of this emotion?
That's great. Ian from Aquabats wrote a book. It's called Sound Salvation, and it's the idea that rock and roll feels a lot of like similar connections to religion in that like a group activity, the ceremony of the rock show, and how like with the right music that they can go together. That's his master's thesis.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's tight.
It's pretty cool. So I feel you, Rob. And sometimes I still go to church, but sometimes I feel like the music can be boring and I don't like being lectured to. But my favorite part of the service is the sermon. And I like a priest that I can relate to.
Are you Catholic?
I grew up Episcopalian.
Oh, okay, cool.
Which is kind of like Catholic light. You know what I'm saying?
My grandpa was Episcopalian. Yeah.
And I relate to that a lot.
Cool.
But yeah, I think that it's very interesting that religious freedom is in our country is very important. I saw this documentary. It's called Hail Satan, and it's about these the satanic temple people trying to get equal rights as Christians with their beliefs. It's very interesting because like, you know, it's like a lot of their philosophy is about like equality and having control over your body and acceptance. And they're using the metaphor of the rebel to try to like make their point. And it's a really great documentary. I don't necessarily agree with like all beliefs, but I agree with like a lot of the tenets of like treat people kindly, And a lot of that's like, you know what I mean? Respect.
Well,
people.
Satanism in a lot of ways is pretty atheistic, right? Or like agnostic.
Yeah. The idea that there's no higher deities.
Like it's kind of like metal. Like it's very fantasy driven in a way. Like the mindset behind it is very kind of comic booky from what I understand, but
and
maybe more serious than that. But like, well, definitely more serious than like a comic book. But I remember you know the band Showbread? Are you aware? Okay, they were an old Tooth and Nail band, and I remember they had a blog on their website, a blog post like years and years ago. But the guy broke down, the singer of this Christian band broke down like the basic tenets of Satanism,
right?
And basically, and he kind of talked about how a lot of Christians, he kind of just hinted at a lot of Satanists being. Like the way that a lot of Christians act is no different than Satanists, and from this basic tenet. They're
interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
I recommend that movie because it's like this.
What's it called?
It's called Hail Satan. It's a documentary, and that it's this idea that if you're gonna let one group speak, you should let any group speak. And when they tried to put like the 10 Commandments in Oklahoma at the Constitution, they came and they wanted to bring a statue of the.
I remember that. Yeah.
And it's about that, and it's about like the community around it and how, you know, they're very politically active, but they're not trying to sacrifice people or hurt anyone. Right. It's just like about the symbolism, and it's really based on a lot of the imagery of Christianity. And
well, it's so aggravating to me how like because I was raised in Idaho, right, and I had a private Christian education growing up, which I'm thankful for, but there was also there's such a conservative aspect to it, and one thing that was like really the whole patriotism is Christianity kind of a thing was like really taught to us at an early age, and it was almost like you don't question it was kind of the idea, like America is a Christian nation, you don't question it, and it wasn't until like I got to college and I remember I had a professor who was like, America is not a Christian nation or a religious nation. It was founded by religious men, but the whole point was that it was like neutral, you know?
Right.
And it's just so aggravating when Christians don't realize how much privilege they have as just for their, not even for necessarily being like lit. I don't know, not even necessarily for being serious Christians, but just for being like, oh, I'm a Christian, like wearing the badge, they get so much.
It's a good guy badge.
They get treated so much better before people even know what they actually believe. And like if you're part of a different religion, you get treated like shit. And so you have all, I don't know, it's just so. And
do you know Rob Bell?
I do, yeah.
I love how I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. No, go.
He has a great podcast, and he's gotten in trouble for saying like that Jesus and God don't care if you're gay, and they don't care about this and that, and kind of like a progressive view, which the idea that the Bible and a lot of the stuff they talk about need to be reinterpreted and updated, and a lot of that stuff is of the time. And I agree with that. I think that anyone if you're a Christian, you need to realize that people who you love and who you want to spend your life with doesn't define you and doesn't make you bad. I mean, that seems like a normal perspective, but if Christianity was like completely against that, I couldn't vibe with the religion.
How often do you talk about Christianity on your podcast?
I think rarely. Maybe I talk about God sometimes as a metaphor, but
because I know that you talked with Miles about it.
That was probably the only other time.
Okay, and I know that and I don't know any Christians in like the music scene. Any corner of it,
right.
And so I was just curious. I know that you asked Adam like if he was religious because he was Jewish.
And did you ever hear a show called Silicon Valley?
HBO show? Yeah. I haven't watched it, but
there's a funny episode where like a character comes out as gay and it's fine, but when another character comes out as Christian, no one wants to invest in his startup in Silicon Valley because it's like sick. It's something that people don't want to hear you talk about. And I don't know. It seems like it's like politics, right? You don't want to. Well, it can be very controversial if you're disagreeing.
I think it's also a little bit of role reversal too, though, with that idea, you know, because like I feel like 20 years ago, if you come out as Christian, then like, especially so Christian music, and I know that you probably have a little bit of experience with Christian music from like how you grew up,
DC
or like,
Talk, OC Supertones,
right? You did a song with
John Rubin,
right?
my dude.
Well, okay, so if you listen to podcasts and even just thinking about growing up and going to like a Christian school, it was like if a band was Christian, like if you could claim them as Christian, they were okay to listen to. But some people were like, I don't listen to quote unquote secular music at all, you know.
And that's what was MXPX's big controversy, right? When they started doing secular music.
Whatever that means, because you're like I can't get my perspective out of my music. So I'm one of the songwriters in my band, and my buddy is the other songwriter, you know, and he's pretty much totally agnostic, and I'm very Christian, and I'm not singing about like my belief in Christianity in my songs, but I can't remove my Christian worldview from it. So if I'm talking about, like, I have a song about how I found out a bunch of my friends were cheating on each other.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
Right. Like friends that had linked up and gotten married and whatever, and they were cheating on each other. And there was like multiple purposes of like multiple examples of that. But if I guess that if I couldn't remove my Christian worldview from that, even if it's very similar to my roommate's worldview, I'm still coming at it from the perspective of a Christian.
Right.
You know, and if he approached that, it might sound a little bit different because he's like, I know that pretty much everyone agrees that cheating is wrong, but me, I come from this, you know, point of view that marriage is holy. So I value it in a different way than maybe he values it when he's like, when he's like, marriage is a really good thing and it like brings people together. But I have like a different kind of worldview to begin with. So you sort of complain that someone's not a Christian band or is a Christian band. It's just so backwards to me and so annoying to me because it's just so like I didn't used to be annoyed by it, but now I'm just so pissed off about it because you're cheapening art and you're cheapening people's like honest perspectives. And no two Christians think the same about anything.
That's
you
true.
know? And so if you put them into that box, I don't know, just
well, and also there's this whole thing where like Christian music, like DC Talk was a Xeroxed Nirvana. That Jesus Freak song is Smells Like Teen Spirit. Basically, musically, it's the same exact song.
Yeah, it is.
And so it's like, but still great. Jesus Freak is an amazing song.
But that's also so true, though. Like Christian music totally ripped off.
And Hawk Nelson, they're very Blink 182, right? I don't know if you know that band.
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I
and John Rubin he's amazing, but he was like the Christian indie backpack rapper. But he also happened to be hella dope. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that there was a point in time where like Christian record labels were trying to market bands as like, okay, so I remember going to the Christian bookstore and seeing like the by Reliant K when it came out, and and it was like for fans of Sum 41, Blink 182,
right,
and but it was like kind of trying to market it as like the Christian version of the Christian alternative to these bands, you know.
And guess what? Christians in the early 2000s, they weren't pirating music, so that's why they'd sell so many albums. They'd buy it, right? Christians weren't stealing music.
Yeah, we didn't steal any music growing up.
So it's a good brand because it means if you have faithful people who pay for it, and then it's safe to bring like the church youth group to go see those bands. It's like a whole thing.
Yeah, but
right?
it's so annoying. Like and I don't think that the Bible even supports the notion that the world is safe or that Christianity should be safe or like family friendly or G-rated. You know, I don't think
there's some graphic stories in the Bible.
Yeah, and like metaphors too. Like,
yeah, that's true,
like when
man.
you're talking, I don't know.
That's part of, and we can end with this, but the idea that so I don't know if you knew that I'm like a big Insane Clown Posse fan.
All I know about Insane Clown Posse comes from you.
Okay, their whole thing, the metaphor of the Dark Carnival is this like religious allegory, and they're Christian guys, and at least Violent J is, and like a lot of this.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me.
The stories are this metaphor of like how to act and how to be a good person, and it's like, well, I see it like C.S. Lewis. Narnia is like the Dark Carnival. It's like a metaphor for how you can live your life through these characters, and I think that great art is allegorical, and that's why C.S. Lewis is so awesome. And my last question for you is, what is your favorite book in the Chronicles of Narnia?
I'd say that my 3 favorites.
Okay.
And then I'll narrow it down to one afterward. Magician's Nephew, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Last Battle.
Wow.
And I would say, I kind of want to say Last Battle. Like C.S. Lewis was just so okay. So the thing about The Last Battle is are you familiar with all the books?
Yeah, I read them all. I did an EP about with this song.
That's true. That's true. So the end of The Last Battle
on Patreon.
The end of The Last Battle where they're all running toward heaven and it's like a new London or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like the old London was just an imprint of like the real London is kind of the idea, you know,
It's very platonic.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. It's like I love getting into that stuff. How he was kind of a big Plato fan, and whether or not you agree with Plato's philosophical views, excuse me, one of my like best friends is a philosophy major, and he's like, oh yeah, that's all like bullshit or whatever. But yeah, anyway.
What, he doesn't believe in Plato? Is Plato discredited?
Not completely, just like some of his views about things. So when you talk about like Platonic views of I don't know, and Adam with religion, he's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know about that, but anyway, point being, that's really interesting to me that he put that into his theology and he put it into his book.
Right. C.S. Lewis is a well-read dude.
I'm sure that I just misquoted my friend. He's going to be like, what the hell, man? but
Plato being the origin of one of the origins of, after Socrates, of Western philosophy, right?
Right.
Very influential.
Well, it's just the idea that the thing I find so interesting is the idea that everything that we comprehend and make in this life is appealing to like a perfect standard that we have in our head. And so that's kind of what he was arguing is like heaven would be the perfect representation or the world, like our world is like a model of heaven. Yeah. Of like heaven.
And all the people we love are there that have died.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
He kind of touches on that. Yeah.
And that's if you haven't read the Last Battle, we're going to spoil it. The kids die in a train wreck.
That's awesome.
And they don't expect it, but like that's the twist there at the end. Like, oh yeah, y'all already dead.
Yeah,
and that's the crazy twist. Does that happen at the beginning of that book? Right?
Yeah, because they're all waiting for the train. I don't know if it does. I read it,
but Lucy doesn't because she doesn't believe.
Not Lucy.
Susan.
Oh. Yeah.
Cold. C.S.
No, but she goes to like London heaven.
She's already there.
She's in London heaven for some reason, right? So
do they meet her at the end?
I think they see her. Like they're like looking out from like afar. I don't know.
On their way.
It's been a long time since I read, so
we're gonna get a lot of C.S. Lewis scholars tweeting us, correcting us. I do recommend those books. I read them all in the order of the chronology of when they're supposed to take place. So I read A Magician's Nephew first because it's a prequel, right?
Right.
So I thought that was a tight way to read them.
Yeah. Well. So the box set I had growing up was like it had them in chronological order rather than the order that he wrote them.
That's great.
And so Magician's Nephew was always first. And I love that book. I think that's such a good idea of like all these little worlds with their pools or whatever. And then
that's dope. Yeah, that's very Plato as well.
Is it?
Well, the idea that things are projected and that it's like a.
So I haven't studied philosophy very much. All I know is from my friend and from my and from that class about his philosophical views. So,
well, speaking of perfect forms, if you want to check out some perfect music, head over to Hidden Home Records on Bandcamp. Rob, thanks for being on the episode. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, thanks for having me on. And then support Lars on Patreon.
Hey, thanks, Rob. All right, see you guys.
Man.
Peace.
Now get your body moving, shake and lose control. Now get your body moving, shake and lose control. Now get your body moving, shaking, get your body moving, shaking, get your body moving, shaking. Lose control. control. I've been working on this my whole life. To finally be here, boy, it feels so right. I'll never forget this, this is a highlight. Doing what I love, that is so tight. I made this, built this, brought this from the ground up. I'm like a father watching my music grow up. I work real hard, don't really believe in good luck. I got to where I am by being who I am. Have I made it? Nah, not even close yet. You still working? Boy, you better believe that. So what you doing? I'm celebrating right now. We took a big step, we so much closer now. Hip hop, punk, rock, put your hands together, make the verse drop. Hip hop, punk, rock, put your hands together, make the verse drop. Now get your body moving, shake and lose control. Now get your body moving, shake and lose control. Now get your body moving, shaking, get your body moving, shaking, get your body moving, shaking. Lose control.
Jack Horseman in the hills of Hollywood committing arson, trolling PewDiePie, that's why they call me Eric Hartman. Still loving Roger Rabbit, Oxford Magnet on my fridge with a shopping list for Tuesday, making anthems for these kids. Big O when I go hard, we be blasting ballsy beats, and I'm still down with Son Goku, call me Dragon Ball MC. Waylon Smithers on the mic because I go for the full Monty. Track these vocals on an Apple past the 3.5-inch floppy. Don't got the greatest flow, so I spend my nights at home with the lights out in the bathroom watching Space Ghost on my phone. Or maybe Rick and Morty, won't stop rapping till it's boring. Jasper Beerley on the mic, can't believe I'm nearly 40. Where we park the van, that's another story. Cause touring every year feels a lot like Finding Dory. I heard that Donald won, he's always frightened me. Sadder than the plot of Manchester by the Sea. And we're taking Peppy back, your authority is over. Retweeting Bernie Sanders, glad I finally got sober. With my vocals sounding crisp and my levels always balanced as I sneak into your playlist just like Putin at the ballot.
Hip hop, punk, rock, put your hands together, make the verse drop. Hip hop, punk, rock, put your hands together, make the verse drop. Now get your body moving, shake and lose control. Now get your body moving, shake and lose control. Now get your body moving, shaking, get your body moving, shaking, get your body moving, shaking. Lose control. I've been doing it on my own dime. It's finally paying off and it's blowing up my mind. If you don't like it, that is absolutely fine. Cause today's my day and this is my time. I played a show with Lars and then he got back to me. I wanted some Northwest states and he gave me the whole country. It's 1,000 miles, see and things I've yet to see. And I'm bringing my best friends, it's better than I dream could be. Got a DJ solo track, that's a bit of hip-hop history. Got a feature on that track from pioneering this industry. Cause the people who are influential that are working with me got a lot invested here, the test is near, it's all up to me. Hip-hop, punk, rock, put your hands together, make the verse drop. Hip-hop, punk, rock, put your hands together, make the verse drop. Now get your body moving, shake and lose control. Now get your body moving, shake and lose control. Now get your body moving, shaking, get your body moving, shaking, get your body moving, shaking. Lose control.
Great episode. Support Rob, support his bands, Hidden Home Records, doing great stuff. Next week, we got Word Burglar from Canada. We did a show a few weeks ago in Philadelphia, and Word Burglar is dope. We talk about what it's like to be a Canadian, how the Canadian government underwrites every Canadian piece of media that comes out so they don't have to pay for anything. No, that's not true. But we talk about the whole thing, the stereotype people have that Canadians get grants for their art. And Word Burglar sets me straight. It's true. But also they work really hard. And also they have a very dope national identity. And also Canadians love it when you generalize about their country. No, Word Burglar's tight. So check that out next week. Got some new Patreon songs coming. Please like and subscribe. Spread the word. Thanks for listening. All right. Hope y'all having a good summer. And I'll talk to you next Monday. Peace, y'all. Thanks. Oh, by the way, it's MC Lars, but you probably knew that.